Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to this month's Coffee Chat. We're cheating a little bit. It's actually the second Coffee Chat of June, but the first one was 4 weeks ago, so every 4 weeks, I suppose, we'll have a Coffee Chat in order to meet the schedule. Thank you for joining us. We have a great crowd of people on today, and we're here to talk more about what happened during the Monero Conferenco, Monero's very first conference. So, of course, we have Brandon on because it's necessary for him to have him on. We have many other people who are part of the Monero community on. This is a very interactive session, so make sure to ask us questions. We'll be sure to answer those. But let's start, of course, with introductions. So starting with me, my name is Justin. You did not really see me too much at the Conferenco, except for 2 seconds of the live stream when I came on near the end. I was handling the live stream and everything in that regard, and I think it went really well. And most of the talks, save for Christy and Howard's, have been uploaded, so take a look at those. They're available on the same channel. But that's about me. Let's talk about Brandon. Can you introduce yourself to everyone, because you are the you are the man of the hour.
Well, I was anyway. Hi everybody, I'm Brandon Goodell. I work under the pseudonym Saray Noether for Monero Research Lab, and along with the help of an enormous number of volunteers, I organized the conference this past weekend. Should I speak about my research too, or what I talked about, or is this just introductions? Yeah,
I think we'll have a separate section to talk about research, but you can give a high level thing here too, if you'd like.
Yeah, cool. Well, anyway, we'll talk about research later, I guess. I just wanted to introduce myself. I work for MRL, and I was moderating several of the panels or the speakers over the conference, so you'll probably see me in and out in those live streams.
Very cool. And we have a decent crowd already starting to chime in, telling us all good morning. Make sure you ask questions too if you're watching. All right, Sarang, can you introduce yourself, please?
Unmute.
You are muted.
Not anymore, I'm not. All right, hello, I am Sarang Noether. I'm also a researcher doing work under the MRL umbrella. I too was over at the conference, and you said my talk is already up, so cool. I talked a bit about transaction efficiency and how it's changed over time and how it might change going forward. And I also was the moderator of a transcontinental panel on governance and regulation and things like that between panelists on our side in Denver at the Conferenco, and also from ZCon 1 in Croatia, which I was really impressed with. I think it went super well.
Excellent.
That crashing sound was not me.
I'm sorry, what was that?
That crashing sound was not me, I promise.
The crashing sound is Monero going farther and farther.
Yikes.
Yes, everyone should be not talking, so I'll mute myself.
All right. Since you spoke up next, Diego, can you introduce yourself to everyone, please?
Hi, everybody. My name is Diego. You guys know me as Rarar.
Yeah, that was nice and quick. What did you do at the conference when you were there?
I sold Cypher Market merchandise, which you can buy at cyphermarket.com. We're working on the jingle. I sold Cypher Market merchandise and identified a whole bunch of ways that Monero sucks. And so I'm now going to try to make some things that make Monero not suck so much.
Thank you so much for doing that post-mortem rundown, by the way. It was very helpful.
Sure.
Yeah, to give a bit of background, Diego made a sort of, this is what happened when I was at the conference and how it went and how awesome it was. And here's the parts that sucked about being a merchant receiving Monero payments and transactions. So it was pretty funny. I'm sure we can, no, go ahead, Diego.
No.
Okay, yeah. So do you want to talk really briefly before we continue with introductions about what you found to be the biggest challenges of accepting Monero payments as a merchant?
You know, some of them are things that can't be changed, and some of them are things that can. Like the things that can't be changed is, well, I guess it can be changed because it's not on the protocol level, but waiting for a certain number of confirmations before some Monero unlocks. So, or waiting for a certain number of confirmations before you allow the person to walk away. I mean, obviously, I don't think anyone's going to pull any kind of crazy attacks for a T-shirt, but I can imagine that if you go to a store that sells higher end watches, somebody buys a really expensive watch or any kind of a collector's item, you may want to wait for 1 or 2 confirmations. And luckily with Monero, the confirmation time is 2 minutes. So it's not exceedingly long. Sometimes with Bitcoin, it's like 10 minutes. And then if you get particularly unlucky with a block, You know, with Monero, you may not find something for 8 minutes, or for Bitcoin, you may not find something for an hour. So you're just looking at your customer who's looking, he's kind of tapping his foot, and he's like, You're like, no, just hold on. It should be soon. It should be any time now. This is not acceptable in a fast-paced retail environment to kind of put somebody in timeout with all, like, go stand in the corner with all those other people that are waiting on the block as well, and you guys can all leave as a group once it's found. So that, you know, some protocol level stuff is annoying. What's also annoying is that there's no sort of good point of sale application for accepting Monero that is kind of all inclusive and lets you manage inventory and put it on somebody else's phone safely. Because I don't want to, you know, I said in the post that what I did is, with my wife there, I put the seed on her Monero as well. So like, she has spending rights so she cannot just generate QR codes, but she has spending rights for it. And I trust her, but like, I don't necessarily trust any employees that I would hire to sit at the table and sell merchandise. I just want them to be able to accept Monero, generate QR codes without being able to spend or even view how much Monero is in the wallet. So a view key is also not good here, because then they'd be able to view how much is in there, and that's not information that I care to share with some employees. So there's a few more like that. You can go look at a post on the Reddit, which I really need to put my own little blog thing, so I could put those there, so I could post myself and syndicate elsewhere. But yeah, go check it out. I kind of go into depth. It's kind of a long post, and I put some TLDRs for those people that generally prefer those.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Diego. I'm glad that you were there to offer really cool Monero merchandise, and of course to make a rundown at the end describing your experience. It's really useful for us. Okay, so we have since Isthmus is having a few issues here, let's go to the Charlton. Charlton. Can you first of all pronounce your name correctly, and then introduce yourself and what you spoke about at the Conferenco?
So it's pronounced the Charlatan. I basically presented the work I did over the past 1.5 years, which is making sure that the Monero CLI releases can be rolled up much faster and in a much more secure manner. And as of yesterday, I started doing the same work for the GUI now, but that turned out to be a completely different beast.
Very cool. Thank you for introducing yourself there. Need Money 90, can you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, hey, I'm Need Money 90. I spoke about moderating Monero at the Conferenzo. I don't have a video right now because it's really early in the morning and I am not fit to be on video. So you'll have to deal with just a voice stream for the moment.
You got all your video recording out of the way last weekend. You're done for the next few months?
Yeah, that's, well, not next few months, just next coffee chat will be fine.
I just need to document on the video just so everyone can see, so I have something to point to. Need Money 90 is a scammer. He stole 2 of my shirts.
Yeah,
he promised payment.
I stole his stuff.
And
it
never
it's
happened.
an exit scam. I told you it was an exit scam.
I've sued him twice, and both times the courts ruled in his favor, just because he has better lawyers than me.
I'll deal with it today. I'm sorry. Okay, who's next?
All right, so we still have Isthmus seems to be trying to join us. Isthmus, whenever you get your AV working, just interrupt me or anyone else at any point. We'll get you on. So I want to first of all open it up for feedback in the live chat here. What were people's favorite talks from the Conferenco? And I'm playing a dangerous game here because I know several people gave talks, but in my opinion, Isthmus, can I hear you now? Almost. I can see you, Isthmus.
Do I exist yet?
You exist.
Yay.
Would you like to? Perfect timing. Would you like to introduce yourself? You muted yourself.
Hello. Can you hear me now?
There you go. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so it's Mitchell is my, I guess, real world name. I do kind of statistics under the MRL umbrella. This isn't my bedroom. I'm at Insight today. We're running a distributed Saturdays event out in San Francisco. Yeah, I had a great time at Conferenso. I actually am like rolling straight into that. We've got a September cohort of my free like blockchain engineering fellowship coming up. So I flew right back in, went right back to getting ready for that. So if anyone's interested, I don't have a jingle, but insightconsensus.com. You can learn kind of what's up here. But yeah, thanks for having the coffee chat. Great to see you all again. It's been a couple days.
Yeah, I will say, Isthmus, on a personal level, I thought your specific talk was phenomenal. I thought that you took sort of the ideas that we had in Breaking Monero and just took them to the ideas that we had in Breaking Monero. Really, really awesome. Can you speak a little bit about what you gave in your talk, and hopefully people will be inspired to watch it?
You're providing a lot of echo, Isthmus, so when you're not talking, if you could mute your thingy.
Okay. Yeah, will do. First of all, thanks, SGP. Really appreciate it. The kind of bulk of my talk was looking at ways that transactions can kind of stick out on the blockchain if they have some kind of unusual feature. So the three that I looked into were people that put very strange fees on transactions. Normally, if you're using the core software, it's just fee level 1, 2, 3, 4. But then there's lots of odd variations that custom software is using, which kind of fingerprints the software. And then I looked at people that are spending outputs faster than 10 blocks. So the 10 block lock time that Diego mentioned is actually not enforced in the protocol. It's like a soft rule in the wallet. And so like 1.6% of transactions stick out because they have ring members that are younger than the block time or the block lock age. And then for the last one, I looked into when you have really unusual decoy selection algorithms that don't blend in with the rest of the blockchain, and kind of ways that we can quantify that. And I think it was really cool. I was like kind of honored to speak in a Breaking Monero session. I think I gave kind of like an intuitive explanation and visualizations for some things. Then Brandon's talk basically added a mathematical framework around that. And then Arctic did this awesome talk about block size. I was saying we either did the Breaking Monero title justice, or maybe we made it a little too broken. Not sure, but it was a great session. I'm glad that was in the Conferenso.
Yeah, I mean, in my opinion, I don't think you took it too far. I think it was awesome. Speaking of which, Brandon, if you're still here, can you give a rundown? He's not here actually. So Brandon will be back hopefully soon. But he gave another excellent talk on Breaking Monero and how Monero is sort of, in his opinion, a 1 out of 10 in terms of the privacy it offers, and everything else is a 0 out of 10. And there's a ton of room for improvement going forward. So, in my opinion, that's another fantastic talk to go watch.
Can I actually jump in on that?
Sure.
So he happened to comment to me the next day that he wanted it phrased like slightly differently than how he said it in the talk. So I'll just kind of take this opportunity to throw that addendum on there. He was saying that the non-privacy based coins, and this is like kind of relaying a conversation that the two of us had, non-privacy coins are at a 0 out of 10 in terms of being very traceable. Coins like Monero, Zcash, there's a bunch, all are kind of at like this 1 out of 10 if you use them out of the box, where they offer some protection, some plausible deniability. But Monero, Zcash, Rio, we're all like susceptible to analysis. And then that if users are very savvy and are maybe like churning, using network layer protection, etc., you can maybe get up to a 2 out of 10. So those are just kind of sharing his words.
No, very cool. Yeah, absolutely. So Isthmus, what are you working on next? Because I know you you're working on some cool stuff at the moment too.
Oh, there's so much on the chopping block. So Neptune did a big data extraction on transaction extra field, which is just full of treasures. So we're going to be working together on kind of analyzing that in the next couple days. Another thing that we're interested in looking into that very much kind of fits into the spirit of the talk is the way that Coinbase outputs are spent or not spent or overspent. And this is actually, Justin wrote an amazing article kind of detailing a lot of the issues with the way these get mixed into the anonymity. The way that the Coinbase outputs appear to get mixed into the anonymity pool by the decoy selection algorithm isn't very representative of the way that they're actually mixed in practice. And anytime your decoy doesn't match your reality, that's when you start to leak information. So we're looking at ways to kind of improve best practices for pools and whatnot. Also working on getting some kind of public facing tools. So Neptune dumped all of the like LMDB blockchain data into a SQL database. So now we can do relational queries. So making that public facing, probably spicing up a blockchain explorer in a way that will help non-technical users check whether their transactions are safe. So during my talk, I made a comment of, oh, if you want to know if your wallet provider or your exchange or whatever is doing these correctly, just go to the blockchain and look at your transaction. And I kind of realized after I said that that's much easier said than done. You know, not everyone knows how to go through and check decoy ages and check ring member distribution and all of that. So since I have these things quantified,
not only that, if you broadcast your transaction ID by searching like a block explorer immediately after you make a transaction, you're broadcasting your IP, right? And so there's safe ways to check your block explorer to make sure that everything has gone okay, and there's unsafe ways, and it's tricky. Sorry to interrupt, Mitchell.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. It was something I meant to say during my talk, that you shouldn't just go punch it in, and I totally forgot that. And actually, because of that, our blockchain explorer will probably only be accessible through VPN or Tor, free ones, so anyone can get in. Because I do not want to be responsible for people coming to my blockchain explorer and then dumping in all their transactions and like my server recording that metadata. So we're not going to have clear web access. I don't want that liability.
That sounds totally awesome. I'm super looking forward to that. I linked the original post I made on Coinbase outputs in the chat there. Sort of a crazy idea, hand wave, what could you do type deal. But I'm happy that they are looking much more in depth at what you can actually do and what the impact of those decisions could be, rather than speaking at a really, really high level like I did in that conversation. All right, let's move over to. Yeah, let's move over to some MRL discussions, because I know that a lot of things have been happening, and we haven't had a Monero Research Lab meeting in a few weeks because we've all been busy with traveling and the Conferenco and a ton of other things. It's totally understandable. So, Sarang, can you give us like a quick rundown on what's really been up with the Monero Research Lab? What have you been working on, and what can we expect over the next few months?
Yeah, it's kind of an Office Space, what exactly is it you say you do here kind of thing, which is always a good question to ask.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I too am very, very interested in some of the data analysis work that Mitchell and Neptune and some of those folks are doing. Being able to actually have like really good, archiving of information and easily accessible data, that's going to be great. I think that's something that we've kind of been lacking for a while. So I look forward to that. From my perspective, at least, one thing we've been working a lot on is signature schemes and kind of improvements and efficiencies to those. So we've had a lot of things that involve the letters LSAG floating around. One of them was the dual output signature scheme, DLSAG. That was presented formally at Conferenco, and the preprint is already out for that. Still working on trying to figure out ways to kind of fix up some of the key image stuff there, which is kind of a big sticking point for that. You might remember that that was a signature scheme that kind of changes our output format and could open the door to things like payment channels and certain kinds of atomic swaps and non-interactive refunds. Completely separately from that, the other kind of drop-in signature scheme that we've been working on, which was CLSAG, C for compact or compressed or whatever you want to call it. We're terrible with naming. That was kind of the drop-in replacement to our existing ML-SAG signature scheme that we use for our standard ring signatures. And you might remember, and if you don't, you can always look at my talk where I go and talk about that. It would basically shrink the signature size by half. It would also improve the signature verification time by about 15 or 20%. So we have a paper out for that. We have prototyping code. We have timing code. Monero Mu has worked that into, I don't think it's a pull request yet, but he's got a branch where that's working pretty well. Figured out multi-sig with it. So a whole lot of other stuff that's been going into that. Really where we're sitting right now is looking for auditors. So working with Ostif, which is a nonprofit that we've worked with in the past for the MX audit and the Bulletproofs audit that helps us kind of coordinate and handle some of the payouts to the auditors. So we're looking for auditors to look at both the math, because that's new in-house math, and also the implementation. So in an ideal world, that would all be ready to go in time for the freeze for the October fork, or whenever we end up doing it for the fall. I think at this point, we're probably kind of really kind of skirting the line on if we'd be able to do that. So it's probably more likely that we would get audits that would be done in time to get everything worked up for, probably spring, if everything goes pretty well. So shucks, but it'll go in place eventually, I think, provided that everything goes pretty well with the audits. It's a really good improvement. It's better on space. It's better on time. Those are kind of the two big factors. And we have formal security proofs for it, which is always a good thing. Separately from that, there may be a few other miscellaneous improvements to the existing signature scheme verification. Those wouldn't be consensus related, so they wouldn't have to wait for a network upgrade or a fork. That could just go out in a client upgrade, but there's a good chance we could shave probably maybe 4 to 5% off the verification time of all existing ring signatures, so that could improve sync time going forward. So working on little things like that just to make the experience a bit better. So there's been talk about whether or not we could increase the ring size. I mean, we can always increase the ring size. It's just like a dial that we can play with. But that, of course, impacts verification time, generation time, and also overall blockchain space. So we'd have to have really good discussions about whether or not we think that kind of the marginal increase in ring size that we could effectively do with these improvements, is going to be good enough for our users, relative to these other trade-offs. Obviously, like bigger in general is better for ring size, but you have to pay a price for it. So yeah, those are kind of the big things that we're just trying to kind of get out the door and get ready and deployed when they're ready.
Sweet. Brandon, is there anything that you would like to add to that?
Well, Sarang hit most of the main points. He's been taking really great point on the code audits. I've been personally working on trying to figure out what ring size is sufficient in like the most abstract cases. And my talk at the Conferenzo was sort of about what happens if you have very small ring sizes, and what you can do for something like Zcash at Shielded Pool or Monero under various circumstances. Like, for example, if the shielded pool is much less popular than the transparent pool, is there a trade-off between a small ring size and the existence of a shielded pool if the vast majority of transactions are transparent, stuff like that. And basically, I've spent the past week after the conference like elbow deep in my own code that was from about 6 months ago or 5 months ago that needed a lot of fixing. And so it's a lot better than it was, but it's not done yet. And it's really funny because the human brain can keep these really huge projects inside of it by chunking them down and be like, oh, there's this piece over here and there's this piece over here and this piece over here. So it's only 3 pieces, right? And then you zoom in and then there's another chunking of 3 or 4 pieces, and it's like this rabbit hole. And I didn't really realize how big this project had gotten until after the Conferenzo, and I was able to sleep for a couple of days and then look at my code base. So yeah, I'm pretty sure Sarang hit most of the big happenings at MRL. My stuff at this point is just kind of boring simulation stuff. I find it interesting, but a lot of people aren't super interested in simulations.
Yeah, I don't know if everyone would be super interested in the simulations themselves, but I think that what you're doing with the simulations is something most people have interest in the community, just because at a core level, people want to know about ring size and churning, and they want to have good answers here. So it's really important from that perspective.
Yeah, I mean, for what it's worth, I don't think that many people are interested in like signature scheme security proofs either. I mean, it's one of those things where, it's
true.
You got to do it.
Yeah, for sure.
Not necessarily pretty, but it's important.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you guys for making me feel better about my simulations.
This is why nobody likes the MRL. We just go into the room and you guys are like, oh, math, and all this like cryptography, and we're like, we just want to talk about
Dorks.
how Monero is just going to go to the moon and how it's going to get super big, and like your guys' responsibility is just to get us there. Like we don't care how it happens, honestly.
Yeah, and so like this project began by sort of quantifying churn, right? And Justin brought this up a long time ago that if you send transactions to yourself, right? Actually, many people have brought this up, not just Justin, but if you send transactions to yourself in Monero, you sort of like gain this extra anonymity. Well, actually, let me rephrase that. You don't gain extra anonymity. You gain anonymity that one would hope one would have. But the question is, how many times should you churn, and whether or not you're actually leaving a statistical signal when you're churning. And some of Ismas's research and his presentation at the conference showed pretty clearly that if you have sloppy churn practices, it's just as obvious. It's actually more obvious than if you were just using Monero vanilla off the shelf. So the goal here is to try to figure out what best practices we should be recommending for wallet developers and such.
Yeah, definitely. I'm going to bring the Charlton back in because I would like to hear some of your thoughts. You worked a lot on Monero reproducible builds, and you spoke about that at the conference. What are some of the other major pain points that you have seen with Monero that you really hope will be improved, even if you aren't necessarily the person you envision working on those?
So another great talk that was given at the Conferenzo was the one by Paul Shapiro, where he basically led through all the refactoring pain points in the CLI code base at the moment. And during my quest towards reproducible builds, I probably ran into most of them at some point in time. So there is a lot of craft in the code base that we should really get rid of. But it will take a lot of time and a lot of effort and probably a lot of sleepless nights for a bunch of people to actually get there. And I mean, in general, or at least that's how I saw it about starting about 2 years ago with actual Monero development to now, is that we often had problems with doing a new release on time. And I really hope that the work I did now at least contributes, or is at least a contributing factor into getting out new code as quickly as possible to our users.
Yeah, absolutely. To be clear, like one of the major pain points of Monero releases are waiting for the code to be built, shipped out, just because it's a long process for really one or two individuals to do. So the fact that many people can check the work against each other really helps with the release schedule, but also helps from a trust perspective. So we have to trust the person who builds the releases a lot less if other people can independently verify what they've done. So it's obviously really huge for Monero's not only just expeditious releases, but also for the security of the binaries people are running for them to have these implemented. So we're all really grateful that you did the work with in order to make sure that Monero is at the place where it is now, where several people can verify this. I think that it's super important. And even though most people aren't going to build from source, it's just the way life works, I think that that we will certainly be better off as a result. And my hope is that we can translate that to quick releases for people as you described.
There's something that the charlatan said that I want to touch on just to get his opinion, and I guess everybody else's opinion. It's always offhand comments where the Monero code is really difficult to work with, where like it should be rewritten at some point, where we should abandon what we have and start from scratch and do something that's much more maintainable. Like you hear whispers and gossip about how people are just really frustrated, and the code base is really annoying to work with just because it's been so spaghettied over long periods of time. What was inherited from Bitcoin wasn't exactly stellar. There's all sorts of reasons. Like how big of a priority or how much engagement do you think that we would get if we were to actually do this? And like what are the huge benefits? But obviously, like you said, this would be just a massive undertaking. But like, should we start looking at this as one of our next steps? Should we start looking at this as something to start poking at, with some of if there's any volunteers that are currently working on Monero as is, to, okay, what would it look like to just kind of do this from scratch and do it good?
There's also endogenics talk from the Conferenzo. He was talking about how code bloat
right.
and it can become an attack vector, right? And so like the joke that we've been passing around since the Conferenzo is that some of the developers are multiple people working for the NSA with the intention of grinding our project slowly to a halt by producing content way faster than anybody can possibly simplify it down to something that's reasonable. So it's not just like something that we need to think about. Maybe we should like throw people at this. It's like he was mentioning in his talk. It's also a matter of like from the ground up, all of the new development needs to be starting with this simplicity forward sort of approach. But as the charlatan will tell you, it's very difficult to refactor code bases, and so there's the intellectual need for it, and then there's the practical whether or not it's actually going to be worth the time. And of course, right now it's worth the time. In 6 months or a year or 2 years, the code is going to be really hard to deal with if we don't start tackling the problem now, in my opinion.
Right, and that's kind of my point, is that just as time goes on, it's just going to get this already monumental task is just going to get even harder and harder and harder until such point where we're just kind of, I don't think this can ever be done, right? So I don't know. To me, it's kind of the unfortunate thing about Monero is everything is priority. It's like, okay, what is the ring size that is necessary? This is priority, right? We got to look through this. What is churn? Defining good churn practices. This is priority. We got to be able to tell these people this stuff. Like everything is priority, and we are so short on hands. And so if you are watching this right now, get involved. So report to your local Monero officer, and he'll plug you in into our community gardens. So, yeah.
So
now,
to answer Diego's question, though, I don't think that a full rewrite is a good idea. Projects do kind of benefit on having this one code base where everybody agrees on that it should be iterated on and continuously worked on. So having multiple code bases, keeping them up to date to each other, sounds kind of nightmarish to me. So there are a couple of projects, I guess, in the greater cryptocurrency space that are trying to do this. So in Bitcoin, I'm especially thinking of BTCD, which is a full Go re-implementation of Bitcoin, and then the Go Ethereum and Parity Ethereum clients. And both projects do work to some extent, but obviously they have some problems. So in BTCD, for example, there are certain features that are just not available in Bitcoin Core, and vice versa. So it's just really, really hard getting a bug-by-bug re-implementation of at least the functionality of the client that you are trying to replace. So doing a replacement is, at least in my opinion, a bad idea. What we should rather be doing is probably just iterate on the problems that we have. So as long as we have a clear list of things that we want to improve and have, let's say, some high-level tracking of how these issues are faring and coming along, this sounds like a good approach to tackle it. And then in general, we should take care that the contributions that roll in are at least somewhat of an acceptable quality. So, for example, Sarang's Amelsack speedup pull request that she posted, I think, yesterday. That's a good pull request. So it has tests. It updated the test cases to reflect the Amelsack improvements, and she added some really good commentary to it. So that's kind of a no-brainer to merge. And then on the other hand, you have pull requests from quite new users. You obviously don't want to discourage them by writing, I don't know, 20 review comments or something. So somehow we got to find a balance between that as well.
I thought you were about to call out Sarang there for a second. Like, for example, Sarang's pull request, total garbage.
Well, if you throw like 18 pull requests at the wall and only one sticks, that's still one pull request sticking to the wall. I'm just kidding. Sarang, I haven't had a chance to review your pull request yet, and I'm making fun of it in public, and that's not cool, and I apologize.
I mean, it could be garbage. I don't know. You know, I hope it's not, but
We'll find
review it and tell me.
No, I'm sure it'll be great.
Yeah, I think to the wider point, though, I think that in terms of, you know, code priority, that as Diego is speaking to, there's so many things to worry about, and also we need to make sure that the code is flexible and able to be built upon. I think that it's important that as the Monero community, we help build, I don't want to say centralization, right? But I think it's good to have some sort of structure so we have better communication, better collaboration, in order to help absolve many of these pain points. And at the moment, I plan to give a talk at DEF CON precisely on how I feel that we can do better in releasing, you know, Monero releases and also doing Monero development so that it's better focused. Because I think that there are ways that we can improve as a community, because we have a lot of people that are interested in helping. And Diego's right. There still is a shortage of people who are, you know, able to help and willing to help. And we still are looking out for as many people as possible. But I think it's also important that those who do help out don't have their contributions sort of held up, or, you know, having to be redone in a while or whatever else. If we can just focus them a little bit better, we can be smarter on how people are helping. And so that is at the moment what I anticipate talking about at DEF CON for 30 minutes. So something you can look into if you are interested. All right, is anyone else here planning to go to DEF CON? I know that that's, you know, still quite a bit away, but I know it's perhaps the next big Monero meetup in a way from people all across the globe. Who else is planning to go there?
I'll be there.
Sweet. Diego, you going?
Yeah, the village would fall apart if I wasn't. No, somebody would make it happen. No, yeah, I'm going. Looking forward to spending time with last year's DEF CON was a blast. It's great to see all the faces and meet all the people. And I mean, just one thing that people don't really think about, it's so good for morale. You know, when you sit behind the screen all the time, I guess some people prefer that, but it can get a little lonely and sad. But then when you get to all these people and like, oh yeah, you know, the community is one of the reasons I do this, and it's a lot of fun, and I like these people, and it's great. You know, you come back home and you're a little bit more energized. So that's what it was to me last year. So I wouldn't miss that for the world.
I may be coming to DEF CON. I'm almost certainly going to C3 in Germany this year, though, because I went to DEF CON last year. I think I'm about 90% to DEF CON, but I may have to persuade my wife on that.
Well, of course, we hope to have you there. We hope to have everyone there, but I think that the Con Franco seems to be actually a huge event of the year. DEF CON will be huge for a different way, but a bit from a more marketing perspective, because most of the talks will be directed at a traditional DEF CON audience and helping them get aware of Monero, having materials, having games, having ways that they can get involved initially in the Monero community. Meanwhile, Monero, at the Monero Con Franco, we actually had people talking about OmniRing and Melantis and all the like, and it was sort of a completely different type of talks that we'd see. So if you're in the chat here, let us know some of the things you would like to see out of DEF CON. You've seen the Monero conference. You've hopefully seen many of the talks that came in, because all except 2 are posted individually and all of them are uploaded in the live streams. So let us know sort of what you want to see about like going forward in the Monero community. What can we do to make things better? What did you really like? What did you not see that you wish you saw? And what did you see that you didn't like at all? We certainly want to know those sort of things. So yeah, certainly let us know. And
Speaking of that, I wanted to thank you, SGP, really quick before you move on, because you did a fantastic job on AV for the Conferenzo and getting all the videos posted, except for those 2. It was an enormous amount of work on its own. And I just want, I mean, like, if I could have the entire audience applaud for SGP, like, he has been a badass.
Thank you. For me, it was really important that those who couldn't come could see a really quality live stream, and that would be well documented somewhere. So, yeah, I felt it was really important, especially within the Monero community. So we have about 15 minutes left. I have one last topic I want to talk about, but before we get there, is there anything else that we want to wrap up with for the Conferenco, or anything with the ODOT 14.1 release? I think it's worth mentioning one last time that pruning is now enabled for ODOT 14.1. So if you are using Monero and want to run a full node, but previously thought it was too much, it's now easier on you. So take another shot. It'd be really cool. Yeah, is there anything else last that people want to talk about during the coffee chat here before I move on to one last final community topic?
So one thing I'd like to see during the next Conferenco would be the different work groups having workshops with each other. So for example, during probably the 2 biggest Bitcoin core developer conferences, they have a few days beforehand where they just sit together, talk about improvement proposals, pull requests, how to improve the entire process. And that seemed to have lacked a bit during the conference. So I'd like to see something similar to that in the iteration next year.
No, I think that's a really good point. So you mentioned sort of workshop discussions about relevant groups of topics. Is that an accurate representation?
Yeah.
Yeah, next year for organization, I really want to have each work group have sort of like, I don't want to say a committee, but I want each work group to be able to present. We had a couple of people from Monero Hardware come speak, and that was fantastic. But honestly, I would really like in the future to see the conference be like one piece of each work group and then have speakers from each work group come speak. I think that'd be fantastic. Thank you for that recommendation.
Oh, and one last shout out. The Monero outreach team has really helped Brandon and me do a lot with the promotional materials, and in terms of getting all the bios up, getting all the videos posted. They've done a ton of work in the background, and they need a lot of help. And if you are interested in jumping in to help with the Monero project, the outreach work group, I feel, is a really, really great way to help, because they're connected to so many different areas of the Monero ecosystem. Because everyone needs help with outreach.
You don't need to be a programmer in order to help the community. I mean, outreach just lets all the people who don't know how to code. Sorry, this time delay. It lets all the people who don't know how to code actually help out. So that would be the artists, the speakers, the people who are doing write-ups on Medium or posts that are talking about stuff. I would consider the MRL partially outreach, at least with their publications. So yeah, outreach is a great place.
And honestly, the Monero outreach team did like all of the media for the conference. So all the posters you guys saw, Diego helped create the t-shirts, but it was designed by Thunderosa. And in addition to that, like the Monero is produced an enormous amount of content, and the Charlatan asked the Monero this morning to make a poster for a meetup in Zurich, and it was like done instantly. It's just people are super motivated to work on Monero, even if it's just for media outreach. And it's I shouldn't even say just for media outreach, because media outreach is a pretty important thing. People are super eager, and it's great to see.
Excellent. Any final points before I ask Need Money to talk about the talk that he gave about moderating the Monero subreddits and other areas of the Monero ecosystem? Seeing none, I'm going to move into that topic, but I think that the conference went really well. I'm glad we were able to debrief on it, the weekend after. I'm already missing seeing you all in person like we did a week ago. So we'll have a great opportunity again in August to see each other, and I hope that goes really well too. If you are interested in the DEF CON work group, there is a meeting immediately after this coffee chat in Monero Dash community if you are interested in helping there. All right, so Need Money, take it away. What was your talk about at the conference ago, and why did you feel that you needed to talk about that?
I mean, our community is decentralized. You don't often see that in the real world. We're kind of exploring something that's pretty new. And I mean, moderating a community like that it's been a challenge and a learning experience, and I really wanted to actually summarize by what I've gone through and issues that I faced, and just some basic history for people who want to go and look back and see, I mean, the work that I've already done and the work that everybody else has already done in learning how to moderate this kind of a thing.
No, I thought that was really interesting. So Need Money gave a great talk. You can see it again in the same channel that you're currently watching this video on, hopefully, unless someone stole it, about moderating the Monero subreddits and the Monero ecosystem, and how there are these pockets of centralization within these communities. You need to rely on sort of dictators in a way that decide the rules and implement them. And he spoke about how, as a dictator, ideally you should really listen to what the community and those in the area are saying and receive feedback from them in order to make the community better. And unfortunately, there was a situation that yesterday we're still sort of resolving all the details, but in the Monero mining subreddit, I was unfortunately immediately removed from the subreddit moderation team for an action that I took in the cryptocurrency subreddit, upholding the rules there. And as a result, Need Money 90 resigned from the subreddit moderation team. And did M5M also resign Need Money?
He hasn't resigned yet, though. I mean, this is an ongoing discussion. So the benevolent dictatorships are a necessary component of the communities that we have currently, because there needs to be somebody who is responsible from the perspective of a platform. You can't just leave the moderation to the masses, say upvotes and downvotes because of things like illegal content. You always need somebody to point the finger at. And while the Monero community and our moderation team recognizes that that's the way that we have to operate by necessity, that doesn't mean that the moderation team has to act like dictators. And in fact, we do try to act like a flat democracy for the most part, unless it comes to things like tiebreakers or something that you just don't really talk to people about. There's a couple instances of heavy-handed things that you can do that are considered fine, but for the most part, it comes down to a benevolent dictatorship.
And I want to stress, like, we have a similar structure for Monero, right? Where, Monero was originally launched as BitMonero under the dictator, thankful for today, who started it off and got it started. And he said, I want the project to go this way. And everyone else had said, no, we don't want the project to go that way. We're going to go this way. And we're going to entrust the Monero core team to be in that dictator role. And because we feel that they're more benevolent. And the second they stop being more benevolent, we might have another fallout or whatever else might happen as a result. And I fear that that's what happened in the Monero mining subreddit recently, where, with no warning, we sort of had a situation where someone just said, I'm making this action without talking with anybody about it, and I'm taking this action because I can. And that's how I feel. They've expressed that they feel that in their opinion, that's the proper action. But as a community, we sort of need to figure out if
we'll see how
what's
this
going to
shakes
happen as a
out.
result.
We'll see how this shakes out. I mean, the subreddit has a lot of momentum. And perhaps the subreddit moderator has played their cards right, and they did this at a point in time, and they took an action that was not controversial enough to actually cause people to move over. This is an ongoing process of consensus, and I mean, the other segments of the community need to decide if actions were egregious enough to actually warrant a move to another community area. So we'll see what happens over the course of the next week or two.
Yeah, in a sense, if I may just butt in here for just a second, in a sense that this kind of thing is healthy, in my opinion. It shows that there's a good amount of decentralization going on within the community. There's a good amount of decentralization of power, because this guy is in charge of this thing and this guy's in charge of this thing. And even though there's some overlap, there's a lot of people who kind of have ultimate power in certain areas. And it shows that they can be their own people and they are not robbed of that. So when people say, okay, but you guys aren't decentralized, there's things like this that we can point to, and we can say that this stuff is not everybody agrees with it. Yeah.
These situations are indicative of the decentralization. They really highlight what's going on. If there was centralization, everybody would be able to just march to the same beat and do the same thing.
Right. And so I just want to stress to people who are watching now that are in the Monero community, if nothing has really changed yet with Monero mining, it's still the way it's been. It's only been a day, but we should keep an eye out on it to make sure it doesn't turn into I'm worried that it might turn into a weird platform depending on how the moderation continues. I think that's something to certainly see. If it starts to become a platform for people to, shill altcoin mining or something else, so non-Monero mining, I think that's something we should keep an eye on going forward, because we'll have to see. We'll have to see what the real agenda is of the people who are involved in that platform. It could continue to be. It could ultimately be about the same and nothing really changes, or it could take a turn for the worse. So we'll have to see. At least that's what I'm concerned about. Okay, so are there any other? I know it's new. It just happened yesterday. If you go to the Monero mining subreddit, you can see, 100 some odd discussion going on there. But I think that this is something we're going to have to sort out in the next few months, and we'll see what happens. I just wanted to make sure we got it out, immediately after it happened. Something of community interest, and something that was really relevant to the type of talk that Need Money 90 gave at the Confranco, because we're experiencing another example firsthand. So I thought that was really interesting.
History rhymes.
Yeah.
History does rhyme.
I think it's generally a little bit weird, just from my perspective. If you were moderating another subreddit like the Bonsai subreddit, and you banned somebody for posting something that was not in alignment with the rules of that subreddit, would it still be appropriate for you to be removed as a moderator from the Monero mining subreddit? That's not clear to me. I mean, we live in a censorship-resistant community, or at least we try to choose to be in a censorship-resistant community. But since the cryptocurrency, the subreddit cryptocurrencies, has a different set of rules than the Monero mining subreddit, I'm just sort of, I don't want to drag out the drama and just sit around and gossip about this. But I'll be honest, I'm a little perplexed by what happened.
All right, I gotta go. There's a DEF CON meeting, so I'll catch you all later.
Yep. Thank you, Diego.
Yeah. There's meetings that everybody needs to go to.
Yeah, everyone has other things to do. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining our coffee chat today. See you again in about 4 weeks. Of course, if you want to see us in the meantime, you can see us in the Monero-Community IRC channel, or on our Monero or our Monero community. So thanks everyone for joining us. I'm glad we were able to have a great debrief of the Conferenco. Again, videos are available on the same channel that you're watching right now. So please take a look at those. They're absolutely worth your time. And I hear that Howard or HYC had a lovely intro to his talk. So you certainly should see that when you have a chance, because it was very, very, very fun. And I think it was great for the community. Thanks again, Brandon, for organizing this. And we will catch everyone at the next coffee chat. Take care.
Have a good afternoon.
Yeah.